Are you looking to change your destiny in life? Be your own boss? Start your own business? If you are, you need people who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants, and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website dkpco.com.au or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
Since 1998, Lanco Group has been providing superior civil engineering solutions and advice to developers, local government and service authorities across Australia. Lanco Group is known for delivering sustainable, efficient solutions. By working closely with clients, Lanco Group is able to meet the complex infrastructure requirements for residential, commercial and industrial developments on time, on budget. Find out more at lancogroup.com.au. Lanco Group, your business partner for engineering solutions.
Buying your electricity from the big energy companies is now the most expensive way to power your home. In fact, the average electricity bill in Australia has more than doubled in the last 15 years, but not for the ones who went solar. Unlike your electricity bill, the price of solar has actually come down, and there's also government rebates available. So what are you waiting for? Join the 2 million households already saving hundreds of dollars every year. See how much your roof could be making you at solarpowerco.com.au. Go solar and get $500 cash back with the Solar Power Co, Australia's most trusted solar brand. solarpowerco.com.au.
Welcome back to Nick and Ante's Serie Spectacular. I don't know exactly with a bit of a working title we're going with here. You know, we're kind of spitballing a little bit here on FNR Football Nation Radio, but we're back 2 months after the first one. We did a bit of a preview, see how it went, but we realised time to go back again, time to go back to the well. We've got more to work with. Nick D'Urbano here, Ante Jukic. Ante, welcome.
The international break is calling for the bucket hat. We're here.
The signal's been shone.
The signal has been shone. Ciao a tutti. I'm really excited to talk about Serie A. The first couple of months, or the opening to this season has very much delivered. It's been a lot of fun, and let's get stuck into it, man.
Can we just appreciate, sort of in terms of every weekend when we talk about Serie A, like when we have our conversations every week, it's like, oh my God, how nuts was this weekend? Yeah. It seems like it goes up another level every weekend. And I know that we run a bit of a propaganda campaign for how good Serie A is. But this season, I feel like in the first 7 games, 8 games, however much it's been, it has been another level of brilliance so far. Is that what you've kind of noticed? Before we get into the individual teams as a whole, how have you seen this opening bit?
Even from the opening weekend. The opening weekend was nuts, and like it just kind of set the tone. There's always like at least 1 or 2 like proper box office games every weekend, and that's born of the variety and like, let's say, the tactical variety that you see, and the overall competitiveness of Serie A. Like, you have the top teams taking points off each other. It's, let's say, from 1 to 10, or at least 1 to 8. It's a really strong and even league, and you don't really get that, especially in the other top 5 leagues. The only similar one in that respect is the Uber Eats, and another underappreciated league. But yeah, like and I remember, like, this weekend I was watching Liverpool Man City. Speaking of propaganda, and I was like, this game is just so bland. And you have all these prem heads like, just, oh, this is the greatest thing. It's just such vanilla football. You compare it to Serie A. Serie A has been extraordinary from the opening 2 months, man.
I remember waking up for Milan-Atalanta on Monday morning, which it probably started just about an hour or so after the Liverpool game finished, and looking at Twitter and seeing some of the takes along the lines of, this is the most incredible half an hour of football I've ever watched. But if you stayed up for just a little bit longer, there was something that topped that by an absolute mile. But you talk about, in terms of bland football in the Prem, I think, well, the only game I watched live was the United game, and that really summed it up. And I think the narratives around the Prem and around how teams are playing and everything, it all feels the same. Neglect of midfield, being counted on, poor defense, poor chance creation.
And actually, just quick stat, in the top 5 leagues, the Prem actually has the lowest goals per game in the out of the top 5 leagues. I just had a quick scan, and and it isn't surprising. And you look at like the Serie A, obviously having the highest goals per game ratio. It's like good midfields impact what defenses can do. Like, and Serie A, for the most part, at least relative to all the other leagues, like Serie A probably has the best of the best midfield player of the top 5 leagues. Yeah, and it's not surprising.
Well, imagine a league where they actually care about midfield. Imagine a league.
Imagine that.
The amount of different podcasts I listen to and English pundits saying, the McFred combination and all this stuff like that. It's like, well, it's not just United; it's every other team.
It's every team in the league, man.
You can rattle off mid-table Serie A teams that have better midfields than some of the best teams in England. It's unbelievable.
100%. Like I'd take Jack ahead of any midfielder in the Prem, mate.
Absolutely. Let's get into it. The team that has really stood up has been Napoli, man. Like, they have been just unbelievable. Are they the real deal? Like, I know it's only 7 games in, but they look very good.
I actually, before this one, speaking of the break or the mini hiatus that we had to our last one, I actually had to listen back to see, whether we were on the mark. And you know what, we when it came to Napoli, spot on. Like, these guys are legit. And the fact that, like, what we didn't see last season, we are seeing this season, and it's no real surprise. Speaking of good midfields, like, Fabian Ruiz has been nothing short of extraordinary. A fit Victor Osimhen, they have their 2 best players in the team, and with the added element of Spalletti, adapting and being the coach that this kind of squad needs. Like, they are, let's say, on form, they're the best team in the league.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I mean, you can look at, I think that some people would look at their Europa League form and think, what's going on there? But it's not relative.
Yeah,
it really
it's never the strong. It's like with Serie A teams, it never really has been the strongest indicator, because the league has always taken preference. And Napoli, like, even in the Fiorentina game, where they did suffer a little bit, and it's like in relative to other games, but they were bloody good, and they played really good football. The Anguissa and Ruiz combination was something that's immediately clicked, and that was probably the one sticking point, in comparison to last season, where they had Bakayoko and or Diego Demme. Zielinski, he's the perfect Spalletti player, like, just for late entries into the box, and that whip, and like just delivery into the box as well. Set pieces is another aspect. Like, they've just been a really complete team, and they're legitimate. Yeah,
and I mean, they've only conceded 3 goals. So going back the other way, they're an absolute rock. And you look at the 2 games when they fell behind in the league against Juventus and Fiorentina, there's a real resolve about them to get back into games and not crumble. I think in the past, we've seen Napoli drop these kind of games. And against Fiorentina, and we'll talk about Fiorentina later, but they've been a team that have really been a tough opposition for a lot of sides this year, especially in Florence. But the Victor Osimhen factor for me is the one thing that stands out above everything else. He is the best striker in Serie A, no doubt about it. I know that there's Immobile has scored 6 goals this year, but we're not even going to compare Immobile.
Stat padding.
Absolutely. We're not. Look, Zlatan's in his 40s. He's barely played this year. And there's other strikers that aren't at that level of Victor Osimhen, and he's still so young. This guy's going to get that much better. It is scary what his ceiling is. And he's really the difference. You see how he terrorizes defenders. I'm amazed. I'm absolutely amazed at sort of the full package of Victor Osimhen.
Yeah, look, there were 2 players, like, we're going to talk about, this player later, but there were 2 players I remember watching at the Under-17 World Cup in 2015 in Chile, and there were 2 players who, like, just blew me away. One was Victor Osimhen, the other was Josip Brekalo. Osimhen has been fantastic at Napoli, and like it wasn't. This isn't a surprise. Like, he was already really good last season when he was playing, but under Spalletti, if there's anyone who can unlock strikers or not unlock strikers, but maximize what strikers can do, it is like Spalletti. And like he's making the leap. The only variable with respect to Napoli is like, how big an impact does AFCON have with Osimhen? That's the only kind of variable.
My thing here as well is you mentioned about Spalletti getting the best out of him. He goes from Gattuso, who we know is a more pragmatic manager. He's not the best tactical manager. We know that. We've seen it ever since he's been before Milan. He's not really been that guy. But Spalletti, as you said, he knows how to get the best out of your attacking players. His philosophy is all about that. But this is an interesting time, I think, as well for Napoli coming out of this break, Ante, because you can talk about the sort of compared to other teams, their fixture probably hasn't been as difficult as say Milan's with how they've had to play Juventus, Atalanta during this period, Lazio as well. But in this sort of period that's coming up, even after the next international break, the fixtures are going to get tough. Torino after the break is not an easy game. Roma as well are going to present their own challenges. They've got Hellas Verona before the break. And then after that, you look at this run of Inter, Spartak, Lazio, Sassuolo, Atalanta, Leicester, and then Milan and Juventus as well come straight after that as well. That's going to be the test for me. I
was looking ahead at the schedule and just thinking, man, like Milan Napoli before Christmas, that is going to be an absolute blockbuster of a match. Like, that's the cool thing about Serie A. Like, I look forward to these fixtures, man. I look forward to these games, and like, some of them are like neutral games, and like, I'm a Milan like sympathizer, let's say, but like Milan Napoli is going to be massive, and even without random explosions, like this is something you got like during Milan Atalanta on the weekend. Like that's the telltale sign it's a big game. Like you just got this random. Like it's the best, man.
I must say, when I think of last season, I think Milan Napoli in Naples was probably the game of last season. I think that was the best game. The reverse meeting, Milan were done by injuries. They were not, they went down to 10 men. They were not Milan of the start of the season. But when you had a fully fit Milan coming up against Napoli at that point, it was, I know Osimhen didn't play, but it was worlds collide, real end-to-end great football.
They were probably absolutely, because they were like the two form teams of the season at that point as well. Napoli would, from memory, they were top of the league. Milan were also undefeated at that point. And like Benacer gets injured in that game, but now just to bring it back to Napoli, like they always had a strong back four. Fabian Ruiz coming in, even under Ancelotti, he was really good. Like he's just for someone so slow, but can impact the game in the way he does because of his positioning without the ball. Like it's such a contrast to everything that you see in midfield play at the elite of European football. He can impact the game without touching the ball, and I personally love Fabian Ruiz. He's a really good player, especially I'm always going to be a sucker for left footers. But a tall left footer who can dribble and is slow like that, it's just tick, 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 just ticks all the boxes, man.
And he can hit the ball. He can bloody hit the ball as well. Like that is the added bonus to it. That ball trails outside the area and he's there. That's going in.
There was some like I think it was the Fiorentina game where he just it's the top of the box and it's like that's a training ground finish. Like he just he just walks into that thing and like he's such a good player.
He's really cut from a rare cloth. Really, is probably the best way to sum up. And I think he goes very underappreciated, especially even from a national team perspective as well. Not even selected again. I think is quite disappointing that we won't see him at the tomorrow morning, even or in these Nations League games.
Well, when you think about it, like Luis Alberto's only ever got one cap, and he's been one of the best midfielders in Serie A for the past since day dot. He's been there for 5 years. Look, let's not. We'll get into the cheap caps of Spain's NT later, but Napoli are fantastic.
Just as a precursor for those watching, we will talk about Italy-Spain a little bit later on. Massive game tomorrow morning in the Nations League. It's going to be an absolute cracker. But let's talk about Milan now. They have this month, I think, has made me the most excited I have been. Last season I was excited, but this has been another level because this has been a month of, I think, to steal Brendan Rodgers' favourite line of character, it has been just full of it because they have had to weather a tough fixture, an injury crisis, which we've seen in the past with Milan with injury crisis. This has been the thing that's let them down. But the amazing thing is they've come out of this arguably better. And they look like a serious team that could really push for the title this season.
Look, I was cool on Milan at the start of the season as well. And it's hard not to get caught up in the euphoria of their start to the season. Like the continuity that has been provided to, particularly to Brahim Diaz and to Tonali. Tonali's been really impressive, particularly against Atalanta and against Lazio as well. Although he's probably, let's say, he has improved, let's say, compared to when Benacer was out last season, and Milan really allowed that first ball into the opposition half in a way that we didn't with Benacer. Tonali, instead of like baiting, he just holds a high position up the pitch. It's almost
just look
like
at his goal on the weekend.
Yeah, it's almost like attacking, defending. But that was also the way in which the Lazio game was really indicative. Like, because I remember us talking about it. I was like, bro, that's the first time I'd seen Luis Alberto really struggle under pressing. And that was a lot of that was Tonali. Like, and he was when games have been in the balance, Tonali has been impressive and Tonali has been impactful. However, and you know, speaking of being cool on Milan, it's like at the end of the day, they're going to lose Kessie and Benacer in January, and the midfield kind of papers over the cracks or the limitations of front three compositions, like particularly with, you know, although Leao is a team's top goal scorer, you know, you do have Rebic as a CF, you have the injuries and unavailabilities of Zlatan and Giroud. Sailor-makers for all he adds in terms of pressing and attacking functionality of the team, you know, isn't like with Leao and Rebic, they're not like a really functional attacking trident, if you want to call it that. The midfield kind of masks those limitations, like I said, and that becomes even more prevalent, or that became even more prevalent, you know, just with early evidence in their games in the Champions League. But they are, I think they've done enough to suggest, you know, they're a legitimate top four team. I don't think there are any doubts there. But when it comes to the title, I'm still, I'm not cool on them. I'm cool on them.
Yeah, I think with me, what I'm really liking about Milan is just what I've seen in terms of the way they defend as well. I think that people be looking at the last two games and going, they conceded 4 goals, but you've got to look at it with context. You know, against Atleti, I can go on about that game all day, how much of injustice that was. And the Atalanta game, it was 2 goals in no time. It was not reflective. You know, the partnership
that does have a bit to do with Atalanta though. But anyway, go on.
Yeah. But also as well, must remember, if we're going to talk about the Atalanta game, Mike Magnon has been brilliant between the sticks.
Yes.
You look at the centre back composition of whether it's Thier or Romagnoli alongside Tomori has been unbelievable. We speak about Diaz and Tonali's development. Fikayo Tomori has been sensational this season, and the way he's been able to play out from the back, his pace in defense, he's one of the quickest defenders I've ever seen, you know. And when you put him and Teo Hernandez in there, It is lightning. And
it's lightning.
I really want to see how Milan play when Zlatan's back.
Yeah.
We saw half an hour of Zlatan. He scored in that half an hour. I think that once he's in, we'll see it be functioning a lot better. I know in Champions League, especially against Atleti, and when Milan want to press, because Rebic runs the way he does, and he's got an engine and everything, it suits that. But when you want to control games and you want to have a forward that can get on the ball, control the game, bring other players into the game in terms of, how Zlatan plays, you'd rather have him up top. I think that they'll look a lot more fun. I think they'll look a bit better going forward when Zlatan's in the team. And that's just the case of him versus Rebic, right?
Yeah. Look, Rebic as a centre forward kind of master limitations or doesn't expose him in a way playing in the wing does. Although he still like closes angles and slows play down with his karate kick step overs and look, I'm not the biggest fan of Ante Jukic. However, I think the biggest question, and like we've talked about this extensively, is if Zlatan plays, do you gamble with Saelemaekers as a 10 and like just this real penalty area threat? And like, do you does that arguably better compensate for the fact that you're not going to be pressing as consistently with Zlatan up forward?
See, I think that's something Milan need to look at, because at least until January, they lack in the 10 position beyond Brahim Diaz. Daniel Maldini is very raw.
Yeah,
I think it's something they need to look at, because when games come thick and fast, you're gonna need a rest Brahim Diaz. He's so important to this team that you probably should look to try it against those sort of smaller teams to see how it would look.
Yeah.
Whether it is Messias on a wing, who I think, despite making those mistakes going forward, he showed some okay things.
Yeah.
Whether you do chuck someone else, so that's again Milan are lacking on the right hand side too. So there's different things that they've got to weigh up in this situation. I would like to see.
Oh, sorry.
I would like to see. I would really like to see it happen. I'd like to see it trialed at least to give us a glimpse of how it would work. Because when Saelemaekers gets central, you see how much, like you just see it. You see those little moments of him bringing the ball in central, dragging players across, and those smarts and how underappreciated he really is in the Serie A and in world football. And he's just his intelligence is unbelievable.
Yeah, man. Like
it's something you can't teach.
Like you think even during the Atalanta game, like Milan Twitter is bashing this guy. It's like, did you not see us score in the first 30 seconds of the bloody game? And the only way Milan gets into the opposite half is through Saelemaekers, like just being able to scan positions, pick up the ball, turn, and get us closer to goal. Like that's the only way Milan, like just, okay, he's not going to be the final ball, but like he's the receiver or the pass that leads to the final ball. Yeah. Like that, part of build-up play is so underappreciated. Yes, you do want players who can deliver that final ball. And that's fine. And that's why people did, value Hakan in such a way, let's say last season, because he could provide that, and that's why, let's say Kevin De Bruyne is so highly valued in football today, or Bruno Fernandes. Like the final ball matters. Don't get me wrong. But like players like Saelemaekers also bloody matter. And I think arguably matter more.
As well. The pre-assist matters as much as the assist, in my opinion, because that ball is just as important at unpicking defenders as
it matters
that
more.
Final passes. Yeah,
it matters more. And that's the cool thing about Milan. Milan are going to press like maniacs. They're going to be able to, they're flexible enough in midfield to generate really good chances. And that's actually one of the things, that in this season, even in the opening couple of months, they still generate the highest XG, or just about the highest XG per shot in the competition. And that's with a front three of, Saelemaekers, Rebic, Leao. This matters, man. Midfields matter. They're sustainable.
You talk about that as well. It's that they get themselves in such good positions to score. All the goals, they're not these flashy, fluke shots from long range. Some of them are pretty damn good goals, but they get themselves, they're working their way into the box so well. And you see how many numbers they go forward with. I've seen these graphics recently of how Teo and Calabria are both getting forward central, not out wide, central, and getting in between the wingers and the forward, and they're just going right in through the middle. And I think that is such an underrated aspect. Before we move on, one little thing I want to ask you from Kessie. Is it getting to a point now? I know that his performances have waned, but is it getting to a point now where Milan need to just turn around and say, all right, in January, considering, the development of Tonali, the form of players like Yacine Adli and Tommaso Pobega on loan at the moment, is it worth now cutting the loss? So you don't lose him for free at the end of the season, but you try and get a deal done in January and just get whatever you can for him. For, say, a Premier League team, I don't know, Manchester United would probably spend big for him, considering they're going to go after a midfielder.
A Premier League club will overpay.
Yeah.
That's like the first dynamic in all of this. The second dynamic, since we talked about that game, since Benacer went down against Napoli, Kessie has been nothing short of like ordinary again. There was that first half of the season last year where Kessie was, he was so great, this, that, and the other. He's regressed to the mean.
Yeah.
And like for him to be demanding such a salary, it's like, especially for such a thrifty sporting department that Milan is he really worth the money?
No.
And is he going to represent like the highest possible market value for them to offload him at this point in time, which I think he does. Like, I don't think there's a better time than now to get rid of Kessie. But I do understand if they keep him, because he does like provide important qualities as part of, the sum of Milan's midfield parts. Like, I can see both sides of the story, but I personally lean towards letting him go, because I think Milan can live without him.
I think so too. And I think that if he does go and you can get Yacine Adli or Pobega back early, maybe Adli, I'd be more inclined to leave Pobega out on loan and let him develop for the full year at Torino, and we'll get on Torino in a sec.
Yeah.
Yacine Adli, I think, would be a great replacement. Also, as well, I know Bakayoko didn't look great in those 10 minutes before he got injured, but just in terms of playing that similar screener function and allowing Benacer and Tonali maybe a bit more. I know you're shaking your head. Yeah.
I just want Benacer to be fit, like consistently.
He's played around the last couple of weeks.
I just want to see a Benacer Tonali double pivot, man.
Yeah.
Like, that would be so bloody good. Like,
the Atleti game. The Atleti game.
They can play, and even the game against Juve, like the last 20 minutes, Salamakers was off. Yeah. And they still had Juve rattled with like a Tonali Benacer double pivot. Like, these guys are elite, man. They can play. And like, it's a better midfield than, most teams in Europe. Like, not just Serie A, in Europe.
Yeah. Let's move on to Inter, because they've got their own midfield problems, man. Like, we're going to talk about bad midfield composition with Hakan Çalhanoğlu, and I reckon that they'd do anything to ship him back off to Milan right now. What have you gotten from Inter this year? Because they're undefeated, but they just haven't grabbed me, man. Like, they just haven't made me go, like, they're okay. Like, they win games, but they're not like, they're great. They're just
not convincing. They've got a bit of Pazzo Inter in them. Like, they've got that. You know what? It's great that they've got that, like, streak of Pazzo Inter in them. However, like, and I remember us talking, we talked about this at the start of the season as well. Like, they're going to drop off, but how big will the drop off be? Signing Tuchel Korea for them is pretty important, like, over the course of the season, like, depending on how long they stay in Europe. The thing about Barella and Hakan, in the same way that Barella and Vidal didn't function, it necessitates the striker being so incorporative. And like, Dzeko has been fantastic. How long he can sustain this is another question. But another point, coming from at the start of the season, Inter kept their best player. Like, Brozovic is still playing at like a world-class level. Their defense is still great. The only thing that's really intrigued me or surprised me under Inzaghi is the really like distinct incorporation of Di Marco. And you know, even on the weekend, brought him on as a sub, and like he's steaming up, like in let's say a better Jim City kind of way, just steaming up and adding being that extra number as a centre back. Yeah. And like he does have a little bit of flexibility there. Like, let's say if he doesn't use Perisic as a left wing back, he can put Di Marco there and Bastoni as that left centre back. That's the kind of thing. The big question for me is, can Dzeko sustain that? Can he sustain that level?
Yeah, my question is as well is also surrounding off-field stuff, because Inter are going to have to keep selling, and they're going to have to keep selling until they get new owners. And Lautaro Martinez is going to be the first name always listed as the number one guy that could leave. And
sell.
I think that they've got to cut their losses soon and just go, you know what, let's build around Correa and Dzeko for the rest of the season and go with that. Yeah. My one thing that I've actually found quite surprising, because I know I talk about final ball, is Barella's assist numbers have gone up a ton this season. I've found that quite interesting, but I've also found just the one thing that has not surprised me, that I think a lot of Inter fans, they looked at numbers on face value, was looking at Çalhanoğlu's numbers before the year and seeing this guy gets a lot of balls into the box, he gets a lot of key passes, he gets assists. But I literally was watching a 2.5-minute compilation, I don't know if you've seen it on Twitter as well, of every one of Çalhanoğlu's just poor passes, mistimed passes.
Speaking of regressions to the mean, and Hakan has you know what? It's been, I'll be honest, it's been immensely satisfying watching Hakan and Kessie like regress to the mean in the way they have. Yeah. Because sorry, go for it, man.
No. I was literally going to say exactly the same thing. And especially in Europe. In Europe.
Yeah, man.
That's been the one thing for the both of them as well.
And look, Barella is he's like what Vidal was at Juve. Like he's just all action. He's going to enter the box. He's going to provide, like, you know, let's say those moments in you know, those like, speaking of, you know, goals and the final ball being important, like he will provide that. But Ozil and Dzeko are so important for Inter. Yeah. Like they are the two most important players for that team. You can pretty much presume that Broza will maintain this level, even though he smokes probably, like, you know, as much as an Golan. Like he's got iron lungs. Like he's going to maintain this form. Their defense is solid enough, but like just the big plot point for me, at least from a footballing standpoint, will be, can Dzeko maintain that? Like, and just as an aside, that goal that he scored when he came on the weekend. Oh my God, that Perisic just is for him. And it's like you and like watching it live, you knew it was coming as well. Like he made that dart behind, and he's just basically, you know, begging Perisic to give him the ball, and Perisic put it on a plate. It was a really, really good goal.
We talk about great strikers in this league, and I think that Dzeko has been so underappreciated throughout his time.
Absolutely.
Since he came to Serie A from City and came to Roma, he's just been unbelievable. And for a guy who is at the latter end of his career still doing this is sensational.
Because you know what, like, look, I was speaking to a colleague about this, you know, about Inter and Dzeko and Inzaghi's implementation. Like Inzaghi always wanted to incorporate strikers, but in a way that meant, like, in a way that didn't need a lot of touches. So, like, let's say with, you know, Immobile and Correa at Lazio, it'd always be like that wall pass in the up back through, like a lot of, you know, wall passes, third man actions. Dzeko can hold the ball up and create. Yeah, like that's like the change in the variable. He can hold the defender off with one arm, control the ball, and if he wants to go forward, he can. If he wants to turn, he can. He can dribble, he can carry the ball and create and incorporate. Like, he doesn't have to play one-touch wall passes in order to incorporate the rest of the team. And that's obviously, and we've always talked about this, like that's something that Barella specifically needs. Like, just not to stress the point, but I think, if Dzeko can maintain this, like, this will be like an all all-time season.
And in terms of replacements for Lukaku, in terms of profile, that fits it. A guy can create the pace, hold the ball up. He's literally the perfect replacement. Let's talk about their former team, Ante, Roma. I mean, everyone got really excited at the start and thought, oh boy, Jose's won his first 3 games. Everything's running smoothly. But what I've started to see over the last 5 games is that they're starting, there's cracks.
Yeah, big cracks.
The individual brilliance of Lorenzo Pellegrini and Tammy Abraham can't paper over these for a lot longer.
No.
How have you seen? I assume we're starting to see a lot of the same parallels, right?
Yeah, look, it was the first game, and like I can't remember, wait, it was the Fiorentina game. No, it was the Fiorentina game. And like it was the start of the honeymoon. The standard the standard Mourinho honeymoon, and they look great, whatever. And they look shaky against Sassuolo. They look shaky against Udinese. And that 1-0 win against Udinese, and they had a lot of the ball, didn't look great. They had the Verona game. They lost, and okay, that was a new coach bounce with Igor Tudor. All right, cool. But they haven't faced very strong opposition, and they've looked shaky. Yeah. Coming out of this international break, you look at who they've got. And we called the Lazio game being a big one. And I was kind of leaning towards Sarri and Lazio doing it, but they've got Juve, Napoli, Cagliari, Milan coming over in the next month. Outside of Cagliari, that's as strong as you could get.
Yeah.
In terms of fixture in Serie A, the worst is still to come, and the next month will be pretty critical. And we were always you're not really going to have a middle ground with Mourinho at all. It's always it's either going to be boom or bust. The next month is massive.
When you have to rely on moments against Empoli as well, that kind of sums it up.
Yeah.
If you have to rely on Pellegrini and Mkhitaryan doing things like that and winning you a game like that. To sum it up, Roma don't want the ball. I think they don't want the ball. This is a team that is built for counter-attacking football, but the thing is their midfield is so dysfunctional behind that pivot. It just doesn't work. That attacking function, it works in moments, but not in terms of controlling a game.
Yeah.
That game against Juve screams 0-0, man. I'll be 110% honest. It screams 0-0.
Look, you know what? And coming on to Pellegrini, he's like that Zielinski Pasalic kind of mold, that late entry into the box. And that works if you have good midfielders and good players around you. But at Roma, you don't really have that in midfield, especially with that, let's say, penchant for Cristante, for example. And Shomurodov hasn't seen a lot of minutes. Zaniolo is really only an attacking threat in the counters. That's the same with El Shaarawy now in his career. Mkhitaryan's just flat out slow, but not that would be counteracted if he was really impactful, but that's not really the case. He was always just that, really. Even when he was at Dortmund, he was like that, really. Just dynamic P&P player, P&P counter player. And although he was technically good, that was still kind of his primary attribute and function. Look, I'm still not in a set position with respect to Roma. I haven't set a short or a long position with Roma. But the initial signs haven't been great.
There's going to be a game in those 3 that I think they're going to get battered. There's going to be one of them, and that's going to be the wake up. If there is a wake up call, the wake up call, I guess, for the masses.
I think it'll be I think it'll be the Napoli game. I think
so too. And it's at home as well. It's at the Olimpico. I think that a big loss at home like that against Napoli, considering they might head into that around 4th, people saying, top 4 kind of game, and there's going to be a big,
Even after the shithousery from Mourinho during the week to Spalletti, the grande Spallettone, I think even though they're amicable, I think Spalletti will want to will want to like. I think he'll be looking for a big performance from Napoli because you know what that will like to come back to Napoli like just the occasion. I think will legitimize their credentials, and I think it would probably do the opposite for Roma.
Yeah, let's move on to Roma, Fiorentina. Now they're fifth, and I'm actually really enjoying Fiorentina football this year. Vincenzo Italiano is a pretty damn good coach, but he has shown some flaws.
Yeah.
In terms of defensively, this is a team that is still very open. They hit teams early. We've seen it, against Roma, Inter, Napoli. They burst out of the blocks, but they fall apart pretty quickly. Like there's no backbone. There's no spale. It's just all meat, but there's no like substance to it. It's like a tender pulled pork burger. You pull it and it just disintegrates. There's none of that to it. So, I mean, they've got an issue they've got to sort out with Vlahovic because they're not going to renew his contract.
No.
That's going to continue to linger over this team. But they've got issues they've got to sort out defensively. That's one thing that I've really taken away from these opening few weeks.
I think it's the other way around.
You think
it's
so?
An attack. Yeah, you know what?
You think so?
I think we've talked about the Serie A being different, but I think Fiorentina are probably like the most pace and power team in the competition. Like, and you look at the midfield, and Italiano hasn't really been keen on Castrovilli, for example, even though Castrovilli is not really he's not really pushing the envelope. He's like it's almost like a Stockholm syndrome with Fiorentina's midfield. Like you have you have Puga, you have Duncan, you have Amrabat as well. Like you have a really energetic midfield, and you have a really energetic forward in Vlahovic. The signings that they have made during the season, fine, but we're coming back into the season, at the start of the season as well, we were saying Stuttgart were a very pace and power team anyway.
Yeah.
The underlying numbers for me don't really suggest sustainability for Fiorentina. On the other hand, they have had they've had a tough streak. They have had they have had Napoli. Like they've had some tough fixtures to open the season. Even and speaking of the honeymoon period, like Roma to open the season away is probably it's not an ideal fixture either. Fiorentina, they're weird. I at the same time, they don't create great opportunities. And like you were saying, they hit teams early.
Yeah.
They create good opportunities that they'll create one big chance. And then whatever they also create will be half chances. They won't really create anything tangible in terms of a lasting threat. Lazio coming out of the break, that's another tricky one. Because they're a team that probably on the same level.
Yep.
And that's probably a more accurate depiction of what Fiorentina will be this season.
Well, they're kind of in that bracket at the moment with Atalanta, Lazio, Juve at the moment. Obviously, that will change a lot. But I think you summed it up. They look flashy in terms of probably the way I probably should have worded. They look very flashy when they go forward. They throw numbers forward in those big moments.
Yeah.
But they thrive in moments.
Yes.
They're not a team that will create a lot of opportunities. They thrive in moments. Vlahovic is a moments player.
Yeah.
You look at the Saponara goal against, I think it was Genoa. Moments. Bonaventura, moments.
Yeah.
They're not a team that are going to dominate. I'll be intrigued to see them play Venezia, Cagliari, Spezia.
Yeah,
how they go against those smaller teams that, when I watched Milan play Spezia the other week, Spezia came at Milan and made things really open. I'd be intrigued to see how Fiorentina go against an open side. How they go against Venezia, who are going to really sit back. Just to see how Vincenzo Italiano tinkers things and makes things work against those sides. But I think this month will say a lot about where Fiorentina are going to place. Because there's a very good chance they'll make top 7. But it's whether they can sustain. That's exactly that.
Yeah, and you know what? You have teams and they played them, but they struggled against Torino, for example. And Torino will probably be one of those teams that like jumps, especially when Belotti comes back. But yeah, I think Fiorentina, they like I said, the underlying numbers haven't been great, but you do have that variable where they've had a tough schedule at this point.
Yeah,
the jury's still out on them.
Yeah, let's talk about Lazio, shall we? They were absolutely given it. Like, I'm not even going to use the word, probably can't in this time slot, in terms of what Bologna did to them on Sunday, and I was shocked.
We were watching it live, and it was like, bro,
we switched over from the NRL Grand Final last on, thinking, all right, this is going to be a Lazio win. It's going to be a good watch because when Lazio play well, they're really good. They were smashed.
Yeah.
This was not like a loss. This was a smashing.
The thing about that Bologna game, and this is something we've been talking about, it's like Lazio are going to rely on that midfield being so good.
Yeah.
What happens when Lazio have a bad day? Like that midfield has a bad day at the office, and like big trouble because you do have those like positional incompatibilities. Like let's say we talked about it. We've talked about it a lot. Messaging with like Immobile and Acerbi.
Yeah.
The third goal spoke a lot about Acerbi and Luis Felipe before. Like, coming out of that throw-in, Acerbi's just steaming out, defending into nothingness. Then Luis Felipe gets lost when the ball comes across. And then Acerbi, when the ball comes back across goal, also gets lost because they don't really have that reference point that they did playing in a 3 under Inzaghi. And then, even in the opening game against Empoli, they were really like, until Luis Alberto came on and kind of strengthened the relationship between defense and attack. Like Lucas Leiva isn't, like a 6 you can trust.
He's not the guy you want in the heart of a starting ball team either.
Exactly, because you are going to be open. And like you do have those centre backs of Acerbi and Luis Felipe who are not trustworthy, let's say, in their own right, in isolation. Then you have Lucas Leiva in front of you. Then you have a really open, aggressive attacking style in the Sarri. So like you do have this really volatile team, and that's kind of what makes the ability of that midfield to control game, or not the midfield as a collective, but like let's say Milinkovic, Savic, and Luis Alberto as midfielders to really impact the completion of games. Felipe Anderson has been a good addition for them, fine. So is Pedro, but like they're really volatile, volatile.
And as much as Immobile has his detractors, his alternative isn't anywhere near better.
Bro, the Iguitana special, man, jobs for the boys. Like he was horrible on the weekend.
Honestly, I think about the fact that this team still hasn't signed another striker. They had Murici there last year and he was already poor.
Yeah.
And they still haven't gone out and gotten someone else. There's this reliance on Immobile that they haven't actually thought, what happens if he goes down? Like, what happens? Do we have anyone else that we can throw in?
And that was also what made the Correa sale to Inter very important, because I'm not sure if Sarri is really keen on playing Pedro up top. Because he does like the idea of someone who can play with their back to goal, and he's not getting that with Immobile. He's really not getting that with Murici, and he probably won't get that with Pedro. They're like, and the Correa signing kind of indirectly exposed that. Yeah. Through his absence.
They've got 2 months to survive, basically. Get through to January and try and get a striker in. They've got Inter next, and that game screams open as hell. If you want to watch, if those watching it, an end-to-end, midfield kind of, it's going to be Lazio's midfield taking over against this. Both sides so volatile in terms of throwing numbers forward. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun watch.
But also against Luis Alberto and Milinkovic Savic.
Yeah, that's going to be.
I'm going to stop from. I'm going to try and not swear, but that'll be a lot of fun. That's going to be so good.
this is the sort of game as well. It's Inzaghi's homecoming.
Yeah.
He's going to have to probably change that midfield composition. Have to have someone else other than Hakan to try and counter that. But let's save that conversation for just a bit. I hear the Imperial March in my headphones, Ante, because this team are starting to emerge like the second best star we said they were going to be. And, you know, I had my hopes after that loss against Napoli and Empoli that maybe for good the Empire is gone, but they're back.
This week
slowly.
This week was just so like they're like that. Like it was like Thanos. Like I am inevitable.
And
oh god!
Because after that Sampdoria game where they were just terrible defensively, they came out against Chelsea and Torino and just put in the most Death Star performance as possible. If you haven't worked it out, we're talking about Juve. These are the last two games summed up everything about Allegri's Juve.
Yeah,
it was horrible. It was yuck. But they're starting to come back.
And you know what? Like it was like they were bad, like just legitimate, objectively bad for the opening hour, specifically against Torino. Torino should have had them could have had the game in their pocket within the hour.
Unless he plays, Torino wins.
Absolutely.
Torino wins. Yeah,
absolutely. And they were like objectively bad.
Yeah,
they played badly against Chelsea, and it's like, and the opening month, it was like, are they really going to Death Star their way out of this? Like the last week, it's like, oh my god, like it's happening again. But like the thing is, with respect to the title, like they've given the rest of the league a pretty big head start.
Yeah,
like it's, you know, at the risk of a double-digit deficit, can they make it up? You know, that's a big ask. But at the same time, it's like they're just coming back with their Death Star ways, and like, and like the Milan game, and that's what made the Milan game so, like, you know, talking about Milan, for example, it's like that's what made that performance for Milan so great, or so impressive, because like Juve didn't have a sniff in that game at all. They created was just simply in transition, and like, look, however, the Torino game, you did have Chiesa and Kane up forward. You didn't have Dybala and Morata. And like when I watch Juve with Dybala and Morata up forward, I'm reminded of that. Do you remember that quote from the Montenegro coach when he had Jovetic and Vucinic up forward?
No, I don't actually.
So Branko Brunovic, he coached Montenegro at one point. This is at a point when he had, you know, Jovetic when he was at Fiorentina, Vucinic when he was at, like, this is like peak Jovetic, peak Serie A, So he goes, you know what? Maybe I can park the bus, but I have two Ferraris up front. Like that's Juve with Dybala and Morata, and like a midfield of, you know, like Rabiot, Locatelli isn't great. Like, although he did win the game against, that was like, it wasn't just the shot or the goal that he scored. It was like the three movements before that got Juve up the pitch. He did grow into that game, but on the whole, that midfield is like horrible.
It's
like
terrible.
McKennie, Rabiot, like it's just yuck. Like, and so that's, they're just Death Starring their way into wins, and it's disgusting how inevitable it is.
The next 2 months are massive if you looked at Juve's schedule.
Oh, yeah.
So Roma, Zenit, Inter, Sassuolo, Hellas Verona, Zenit, Fiorentina, Lazio, Chelsea, Atalanta. That could be it. And if I would not be surprised if Juve come out and 1-0 all these games. 1-0 win.
I think even if it doesn't, though, I think they show trust. I think they show faith in Allegri this time. It won't be the coach that goes this time. I think it'll be I think they'll finally come to the realization that like their squad composition has been nothing short of horrendous over the basically since signing Ronaldo. Like, it's been horrible. And the blind ambition or the dream that became an obsession, let's say, with respect to winning the Champions League, has like basically decimated their squad or eroded their squad. I think, however the next 2 months goes, I think Allegri has cachet.
To sum up Juventus was like, if I don't know if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, Ante, but they're basically Smeagol when he finds the ring, and that's Ronaldo. They had this goal that they had to win and was keeping hold of their precious, but they couldn't, they didn't, and it disfigured them. They lost so much of their substance. And now look at them, they've lost the ring and they're trying to find their way back, but they've got nothing.
Even before they moved stadium, I always thought that Dele Alpi was like the Eye of Sauron. Like it's like
it had it had the big sort of like poles at either end. The two towers in between. And the ground was Mordor.
Like you were, I can't handle. Yeah. I seriously can't handle if they Death Star their way through the next 2 months. I don't know what to do.
And the thing is, I think we can definitely dispel the narrative that Ronaldo wouldn't be changing a thing right now.
No, he wouldn't.
There would not be.
He would make them worse.
Yes.
He'd make them worse.
The thing is, I think for them, what they've got to do, if they're going to be functional, what I would like to see them do, and Josh and I were talking about it weeks ago, if they had the depth, if they could go to a back three and just go in midfield, Benton Court at the 6, just literally screening, and then just bombard with late runs of Locatelli and Ramsey. Because that's how Locatelli's going to thrive. You want Locatelli being that guy and not having, that double pivot and then weirdly having Rabiot on the left and all this sort of,
But you know what? Like, look, at the same time, like Allegri loves that second ball monster, especially even when he played 4-3-3. Like he, and that was what, like, let's say Matuidi was for him. Matuidi, he wasn't the most elegant of players, but he allowed that team to function.
Kevin Prince Boateng at Milan.
Yeah, like second ball monsters, man. Like it's effective. It's not great. It's not beautiful. It's not aesthetically pleasing at all, but it bloody works. And they're going to get moments where they just harm teams. Like even the Milan game, like they looked on the precipice for 89 minutes, but they'll have one or two moments where they just, and Morata is so important for that team. Morata gets a lot of stick. Speaking of underrated players, like I love Morata. Yeah. Even last year, like his movement as a striker is great. His finishing, his finishing is notoriously bad, but I would rather a striker that allows you to get a lot of chances than a striker who's going to finish like a small amount of chances. Just like it's weight of numbers thinking, but I think Morata allows for that. And I think Morata with Dybala specifically is great as an attacking pairing. But speaking of Juve, the one Juve thing that I do regret is like Ronaldo breaking up like low-key one of the best attacking partnerships like in European football in Dybala Higuain. That was like awesome.
That was straight up pornography. I'm just like I get it, it was beautiful on the eye.
Yeah, it was.
It actually made you want to watch Juventus. Now they're a shell of that, and I love Moise Kean, but he's not functioning with the way that they play in the unit that he's got around him. With Chiesa and Bernardeschi alongside him, it was so like burning my eyes watching that. And talking about that, I am so scared tomorrow morning it's going to get to a point against Spain where that front three could actually happen, knowing Mancini's infatuation with bringing Bernardeschi on and knowing he will start Chiesa, knowing he probably will start Keane tomorrow because Immobile is out. Anyways, let's leave that for a sec. We've got to power through these last couple of teams. Atalanta, weird season.
Disappointing.
Yeah, very disappointing.
Because like we talked about it, like not at length, but we talked about the void that Papu Gomez left. Yeah, and the necessities that creates from a standpoint of functionality for Atalanta, but with that all in mind, Gasperini is not going to go away from a De Bruyne Freuler midfield. No. And as a consequence, like Malinovski's natural position is really as a central midfielder. And ever since he's come to Atalanta, he's thought of him as an attacking midfielder. Fine, his movement's great. He's adaptable because his movement is great. He's like really good off the ball, great final ball, left or right foot, can dribble as well, can get fouls. So fine, you know, he can play as an attacking midfielder, but he's probably not optimal as an attacking midfielder. But as a central midfielder, he presents something different to the Gasperini central midfielder robot template of, you know, depth and circulation and running and tackling. You know what I mean? And so that, as a consequence, like, you don't really have room for Pasalic, who's probably outside of Zapata, and their wing backs, probably their strongest penalty area threat. You have, like, you play Pessina, who's, you know, she's just a lot of running and pressing. Like, he's not providing any, like, creative responsibility, if you know. He's not shouldering any creative responsibility. No. And so, yeah, like, he has, and in the same way that he, you know, hasn't really trusted Malinovsky, he hasn't really trusted Miranchuk. Ilicic clearly wants out. And so, and watching that Milan game, and, you know, we always come back to it, it's like, how much has changed since that 5-0 win before Christmas? Like, you compare that to, like, like, objectively, that was one of the most beautiful displays of football I've ever seen. One of the few times he'd played Pasalic, Ilicic, Gomez, Malinovsky. And so, and to now, where, you know, they still attack, they can still create good opportunities, but, like, they seem so reliant on Zapata with his back to goal and holding off.
And interestingly enough, Kier and Tamori were fantastic against Zapata on the weekend. Kier especially. Simon Kier, like, he deserves so much more credit, because the way that he played Zapata was just expertly, you know, it's just veteran now of Simon Kier. But the thing about Atalanta, which I find interesting, you go back to that 5-0, is that it just has felt that was like the peak of Atalanta. And it's like this weird trajectory of both teams where, Atalanta,
fork in the road.
And everything for that moment for those two teams changed. We've gotten to this point right now where Atalanta have got serious questions about how does this team shape up? Because I'm looking at that squad, that starting 11, and I go, this is not a functional 11 that's going to get you results against a good team. Against a good team like Milan, that is going to press. You saw the goal, especially Tonali's goal. Freuler just caught out no man's land.
And Darun dropping a stinker in that game as well was so satisfying. And Milan Twitter's like, tweet, we your tweets now. Like,
we could take the piss out of Darun. Thank absolute God after all the trolling he's done over this. But also as well, look, I know they didn't have Gossens, they haven't had Hatterboard, but they've still got Mailer and Zappacosta, who aren't bad options out there. They haven't really changed much. You know, it's the attack. It's what is their best unit, and how can they best use their weapons, because they're not. And that's an issue.
Without Papa Gomez, who, like, you know, like we've spoken about, like, he was really transformative for them. Now the absence of Papa Gomez kind of calls into question, you know, Gasperini's ability to adapt from the template. Because Gomez really, like, facilitated the template, if you know what I mean. Like, all the positional rotations, it all worked off Gomez's ability to work into certain spaces and hold the ball and get fouled. And players worked off him. And he was the only player who really had a lot of freedom. Like, Matteo Pessina is not Papa Gomez. You know,
we know that.
And neither, but asking that of him, or asking that of Malinovsky, is kind of irrational or impractical. And like, whether Gasperini is willing to adapt is the big question, and I don't know.
I would have been intrigued in an alternate reality that they actually got Tammy Abraham and Zapata went to Inter. What that would have done, because I think Abraham would thrive in this system. But that's a topic really for another day. Let's scoot through these last few teams, Ante. Let's quickly go to Bologna. We spoke about the Lazio game. they've been yin and yang this year. 6-1 loss against Inter. They come out and they beat Lazio 3-0. They'll lose against Empoli, but they've been fun. They've been really fun this year because Marko Arnautovic has brought the vibes.
Exactly, man. Like that was a cool thing, like about him playing under Mihailovic. Like, it was like this Balkan coach is gonna like just he'll just look at Arnautovic and say, "I understand you," like literally and figuratively, "I understand you." But I watch Arnautovic at Bologna and think, man, like imagine if he played in Serie A like 4 to 5 years ago. He would have been he would have been a cult like Serie A player, the way that Ilicic was, for example, or a Hamshi. He would have been so good. And we are like, you could just think about fantasy booking, like what team would Arnautovic, have been the greatest in. But even now, like Arnautovic right now in Serie A is great. Musa Vera has been a really good signing for them as well, irrespective of, the kind of reliance on game state for them to be effective as a team. I think individually they've been very good.
Yeah, I think with Arnautovic, I reckon it would have been great to see him come after 15-16, his 10-goal season at Stoke. At that point, just before he went to West Ham, I think that would have been perfect. Like we said, imagine him instead of Arkadiusz Milik signed at Napoli. You could put him in almost any top Serie A team at the time.
Or like and the other big one was Roma under Spalletti. And like imagine how good like Salah would have been with an Arnautovic up front. Like that would have been incredible, man. Like if he wasn't already good enough at all, that would have been nuts. But
that would have been absolutely crazy. It's actually almost a bit sad to think about. Like, Juve actually might not have won 9 Scudettos in a row. Like, it could have been so different.
Speaking of, actually, just quick parallel. I think the title winner this season doesn't get to 85 points.
Interesting.
I think
like be competitive.
I think I'm not sure if the title winner gets to 85 points. I think it'll be one of those seasons.
I think it goes to the final day. 100%.
Like this season is just like slowly building towards this like awesome climax. I hope we're right. I hope it delivers.
To like 5 games to go, and I reckon there'll be about 3 or 4 teams in it. And then there'll be a few games towards the end that will decide it. And I think it's going to be a bonkers finish. Just quickly before we get to our teams, I need to see the final day fixtures now for these top teams. So think about this, all right? Milan's got Sassuolo away on the final day. Napoli have got Spezia away on the final day. So that could be interesting given where Spezia might be at that point as well with relegation. Inter have got Sampdoria at home. We'll have a look at Roma very quickly. They've got Torino away, and Juve, well, they've got Fiorentina away on the final day.
Oh, that's a big game. Like you know what? Like you can envisage a scenario. Not to say that it's going to happen, but like you can envisage a scenario where, like, let's say Napoli and Milan start to stumble after AFCON. And like Juve start to like gather steam second half of the season, like just pure Dead Star shit, man. Like, but you know what? I think irrespective, like this season is 1, delivering, and 2 will deliver at the end of the season. This has been like, I think this season has been confirmation that the Serie A is just flat out the best league in the world. Like it's so bloody good.
If one of these teams, whether it's Milan falling into Europa League in their group
or Inter,
and whether that impacts it as well, whether they go on a deep run, whether Juventus
Napoli go deep in the Europa League as well.
I think Juventus could Death Star their way to a quarterfinal or a semi-final in the Champions League as well. Given how the pieces are falling with other groups, there's every chance of that too. Let's quickly talk about, we'll go Torino, Hellas, Sassuolo very quickly. Torino, man. Now, they've been fun. Juric, Pobega, Piazza, Brecalo, Mandragora, you know.
Without Belotti, man. Like, without Belotti, this is nuts. Like, they've played, look, they were unlucky. against Juve. They probably should have put them away within the hour.
Yeah.
The underlying numbers, I've actually looked at them, like they're really strong. They're probably in terms of like XG differential, in terms of shot creation, like XG per shot, like defensively they've been strong. Like they're probably going to get better, or at least like there's enough to suggest that Torino will get better as the season goes on.
Yeah.
And with Belotti back, like with Belotti coming back, like just the possibility that this will be his last season at Torino, like this, yeah, I think they'll qualify for Europe.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Big call.
Yeah.
Big call.
I'm going out there and like making a big call, but yeah, I think they get, let's say, I think they pinch 7th, for example.
Interesting. Well, I mean, I'm having a look at their expected assists and everything else. They're 5th in the league in expected assists per 90. They rank pretty well in most other areas in terms of XG plus assists, non-penalty goals, non-penalty expected goals as well. This is a team that are probably perform. Their results are suggestive of how good they've been this season,
and they've had strong opposition as well.
Yeah.
Like even like, let's say they had, they've had some tough matches, like, and even in the derby, like they were strong. And you know what, I love the specifically when Pobega plays on the left side of that midfield and combines with Brecalo in that way. However infuriating it is to see Brecalo finally get just play on the left as a left winger instead of for Croatia. Like his one skill, cut in and shoot, and he's slow, so he's not fast enough to run around players. So just play him on the left wing and that'll be optimal. And Ivan Juric from day dot has given that to him. It's just as a story, it's bloody great to see Marco Piazza just having fun.
Yeah. And just getting continuity, playing football, man. Remember years ago,
he was a demon, man. He was a demon before ACL injuries, and Euro 2016, he was like a more dynamic and more impactful version of Perisic.
Yeah,
he was really strong, really, really dynamic, great on the ball 1v1. Really smart mover, good finisher. He had everything as a winger, and he could even play him as an incorporative 9, pinch hitting as this incorporative false 9. He had everything, and it sucked to see him go down, but it's also at the same time really, really cool to just see him having fun, finding continuity, finding tranquility at Torino, and alongside players like Pobega and Brecalo who are thriving in good situations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Pobega in particular has really shone. And I think next season, he'll definitely be in the Milan squad. That's one thing we can definitely say as well. Hellas Verona, ever since Tudor's come in, they've
We called it. We called it on Di Francesco as well, man.
Well, Di Francesco's done. That's one thing we definitely called. That's one tick. Hellas Verona now have scored in their last 4 games, quickly doing the math, 12 goals in 4 games. That's of their 15 for the season. They absolutely destroyed Spezia. But going back the other way, they're still conceding a lot. That's an issue.
You know what? And the quality of their, when you take into account the quality of their goals, or not the quality of the shots that turn into goals for them, and the quality of looks that they give up, I don't know if it's sustainable. And I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of Igor Tudor. I'm deeply, deeply conditioned from his tenures at Hajduk, and just Udinese, where he ruined my boy Andrea Balic, and I don't know how sustainable this is, and how much of it is just a new coach bounce.
Yeah,
and it's players playing for their spots. Yeah, you do have you do have good individual players. Let's say like your Lazovic, You also like Kalinic is an adequate
I
player.
can't believe that's
Bro, even at Roma, like the whole thing at Milan was just how bad that midfield was, and like I think
I mean he missed a lot of chances too. Like there's that one game against Juve.
That is true though.
Yeah.
However,
go on. Sorry.
No, go on.
I was just gonna say, like, I think that there's the coach bounce now, but after the break, coming up against Milan, Lazio, Juve, Napoli, they'll
come back down to earth.
Yeah. Anything else on Hellas Verona, or we can move?
No, I think we've said what needs to be said.
Yeah, I think so too. Another disappointing team is Sassuolo. 14th, only scored 7 goals this season, but they've been in almost every game when they're losing as well, and they're not winning convincingly either. I'm disappointed. I'm not gonna lie, I'm disappointed a little bit, but I do think they can turn it around. I do think that they can definitely turn it around.
I think there's enough. Like I think their front four is still good enough to win games.
Yeah,
I was never big. Look, I like Locatelli. Don't get me wrong, and and it has been a downgrade. Let's say with Fratesi and Maxim Lopez, for example. Yeah. Like Lopez is technically fine, but like just without the ball, he just really doesn't know how to play. But they do have, and what was really interesting actually about this weekend was they're all playing up front.
Yeah.
And like you had both Scamacca and Raspadori on the bench. Like particularly the Torino game, that was like really, really open. I was like, even like
for a 1-0,
Piazza's late winner. That was like the most entertaining 0-0 draw like I'd seen in a long time. Like, okay, Piazza wins it in the end, but like Sassuolo, they're going to like. We did say they were going to like maintain like a certain position, but they were going to drop off. But the drop off hasn't been like as big as you would expect, let's say, with Locatelli leaving and even the Zerbi going to Shakhtar, for example. Like they have sustained. Like really credit to them.
I mean, I don't mind Dionisi as a manager. I think he's okay. Yeah. I think that they've disappointed me in terms of just the fact that they haven't necessarily gotten the points on the board for it's not another team that's not really reflective of how well that they've actually played in areas. Their attack, I honestly think that it's a matter of when, not if, that attack gets pillaged by some bigger clubs. I think the likes of
how the Bogger's still there at the moment is like insane.
Bogger is as good as we know. I reckon he's gone by the end of the season, or it's not definitely at the end of the season. I wouldn't be surprised if Scamacca or Raspadori are next after that. Yeah. Because Berardi, Juricic, De Frel, their value now in their stages of their career probably aren't the same.
Juricic and Berardi are like peak mid-table Serie A excellence. Like mid-table Serie A ballers. Like Juricic rules. Like I'm such a big fan of Juricic.
But hey, he only played 9 games for Southampton in the Prem, so he's a Prem flop. So
Prem flop, man.
And Bogger didn't make it at Chelsea, so he's a Prem flop too.
Common.
Look, I really hope that some of these players can really kick on as well, like Raspadori and Scamacca. They don't. See, that's the one disappointment with me and Berardi. I think that I know Berardi's fiercely loyal to the club, but I would have loved to seen him take that step a couple of seasons ago and make the move. I think eventually he'll end up at Milan when he's 30. It's gonna happen.
I was always surprised that like Berardi wasn't one of the Magnificent Seven signings that summer. I was like, Berardi really I was shocked that Berardi didn't go to Milan that summer.
I mean that team played originally a 3-5-2. I don't know if he fit. He went. Montella went out and bought Conti, and Conti was like the guy at right wing back at that point. But did they actually sign the other wingers? They signed Çalhanoğlu. No, only actually really brought any wingers.
No, they signed strikers. Strikers are
Kalinic and Silva,
and Andre Silva,
We don't even remember about the Magnificent Seven.
Anyway,
that's long ago. Anyway, before we go, let's talk about this next month because it's a big month. It's going to really start to, start to separate teams heading into November. We'll probably do the next pod in November as well. Who faces the biggest month? Which team now faces that a make or break month really now?
I think we touched on it, but I think it's Roma.
Mm.
Roma, they have like just a really tough schedule coming up.
Yeah.
Just in terms of like who they have to play. Plus they've got Europa League during the week. Okay, they do have like Bodo Glimt, but I think they have Milan on like the third game in like 8 days. Do. That's a tough game. And you know what? Like, I think, like you said, this will be the month where you kind of separate the wheat from the chaff. And I think I'm leaning towards Roma being the chaff, and the response to Roma being the chaff might be vociferous.
Yeah, I'm going their opponents in a fortnight's time. Juventus. I think they've got it.
Yeah,
this next month, you know, Roma, Zenit, Inter, Sassuolo, Hellas, Fiorentina. It's a big month for them.
Yeah.
I think the two of them definitely need to get results, and they need to do. I think the other team as well that has a big month is Atalanta.
Yeah.
Because Gasperini's always going to have this lingering over his head about him not being the most popular figure. I know he's been there for so long, but if things really hit the fan, I just wonder, considering that volatility in that dressing room, whether they would, you know, there might be.
Yeah. There's I think
you have to rank coaches that are closest to the sack. I hate doing this, but I think Gasperini is right up there.
Wow.
I think that is based on the volatility and knowing how quick things turn at that club.
And the whole thing with even the whole thing like coming into that Gomez, Ilicic, Pasalic situation last season, and like things imploded, and he was able to like salvage that a little bit, but it's like the seeds were kind of sown. It's like for a really slow burn, and like it's like a slow burn. And
I think as well, the one thing that might work in his favour is Atalanta are a slow burn of a team. They hit form at this point. If any time now Atalanta are going to start getting their proverbial together, it's in the next 2 months.
Yeah.
So now it'd be interesting to see how much time they give him and whether Champions League really has something to do with it. They come out and beat United twice in this month. That changes things big. And you know what? I would not be surprised, and I'm gonna remember this. I would not be surprised they don't beat Empoli. You say they don't beat Empoli after the first game, but they go to Old Trafford 3 days later and they come away and beat Manchester United. It would, you know what? I need it to happen for the brand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Empoli could beat Atalanta, but United couldn't.
It's like great. And like just we could basically just confirm the Barclays as a farmers league. Look, you know what? I do agree with you with respect to Juve though. Because you know what, like like we kind of touched on, there's no margin for error. They've already left no margin for error because of how they've started the season, and it's like they have to basically just go hit every week, and
they've got to run the gauntlet.
Yeah, and now with the schedule coming up, like they do have after coming out of an international break, which is notoriously taxing on players. Yeah, they've and margin for error. They've got
remember as well, Juventus's South American contingency and all the quarantine at the moment as well.
Absolutely.
And that I think they played after the last international break. I think it was Empoli. I'm pretty sure. No, it was Napoli. Sorry, Napoli after the break, and they had to put out a team that was nowhere near full strength because they were missing guys like Quadrado, Sandro, Danilo, Bentancur that just threw everything out of whack, and Dybala too.
Yeah, the one thing coming out of that international break though, like with respect to Juve, is like, because we haven't really seen a lot of Kulusevski.
No, but he hasn't looked great.
Yeah, but see, great. Like now, I think this like speaking of, let's say, that second ball monster. Let's say if like Kulusevski might be that player.
He could. He thrived at Parma in that sort of.
Like he's dynamic, man. Guy. Like, and he can dribble, but he's got an engine. He's not fast, but like he can cover a lot of ground over the course of a match. Like, I'd be interested to see how big a role Kulusevski has over the next month.
But the way that Allegri uses Kulusevski will matter the most.
That's right.
He doesn't use him to his strength.
Yeah. He plays in a way that's similar to the national team. It's like that winger in a 4-4-2, and it's like, it's not great, but like, and he's good enough to kind of adapt to it. But like, he's good, but he's not great. He's not really pushing the needle, but like, I'm really intrigued to see how it goes.
They've got Artur back as well. I wonder whether they use him. Where they actually use him as well. So I just saw his name on the team sheet last week and totally forgot of his existence.
This guy froze. Like, that's a move for 40 minutes.
It would be interesting. Before, I think Josh might be jumping in. I think he might have actually said that he's not going to now. But just quickly before, if we do, Italy, Spain tomorrow morning, Nations League semi. Euros semi-final rematch. We remember that game really as the Dani Olmo show, and Pedri as well. Pedri's not going to be there. I don't know. Dani Olmo, I think, has been called up. But this is going to be a big game. This is going to for both national teams, and we'll focus more on Italy, I guess, because obviously this is a Serie A pod. But this is a big game in terms of both where these teams are at, because Italy's got some players out, Spain have got some players out. I'm intrigued to see how this game goes at the San Siro as well. That's
probably the coolest thing about this. That we were talking about it off air. Like, the last time Italy played at San Siro was the Sweden playoff.
Yeah,
and unfortunately. But you know what? That was the kind of catharsis that Italian football needed. You know what? Because like, coming out of, let's say the whole Venturi Tegna, realizing everything what they need. Changed. Yeah, everything changed after that for the better. Like,
it was above. It was above Ventura too. It was on the board. It was the president. It was everything. Yeah,
that's right. But like, even on a primary, like a footballing level, I think what Mancini did was recognize the importance of like your midfield stocks. Like, Italy's midfield is just as good as, like, now it's probably, now that, let's say, Modric and Rakitic don't play for Croatia anymore, or just, Modric is older than time itself, Italy has the best midfield in football right now.
Yeah, they do.
And like, they're playing to their strengths. And like, we talked about front three compositions, or at least we touched on front three compositions for Italy, but their midfield's that good. Like, they can kind of paper the cracks of it. And you'll still probably have Insigne as as that left winger. Whether Verratti plays will be an interesting one for me, because that's like, you'll have that natural filtering on that left hand side with Italy. And you know what, Verratti and Insigne on that left hand side they're just going to be great, and Italy will function. Like, even if they play, let's say, if they're not extraordinary or they don't drop a masterclass, like, Italy is going to function just as a result of their presence on the pitch.
Yeah.
So it'll be really interesting to see how they play against a Spain team that probably isn't optimal in possession coming into this one.
I think this is going to be a really, really intriguing watch. And I think it's going to I don't think it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be an all-out exciting end-to-end game. I think it's going to be very similar to the
permatense, man. Actually, permatense.
It's going to be very similar. I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if this ends up penalties as well. Like, that's it's going to be an interesting watch. The one thing that I'd be, just before, because I know Josh's got to go, but very quickly, does DiMarco start at left back? He's in the squad now, into the team. I would be very intrigued, because I haven't really, I don't mind Emerson, but he doesn't offer the same as what Spinazzola did. And DiMarco has been great.
Yeah, DiMarco.
It's intrigued to see.
Yeah, I'm. You can make the case for either. Let's say. I think Emerson is like, has a kind of singularity going forward.
Yeah,
and I think DiMarco might be a little bit more flexible for Italy. Like, let's say if they were to be the more active team, or if they're to be the reactive team, you could probably you could probably go for Emerson. And it's going to be very, very intriguing to see how it pans out tomorrow.
It's going to be a fun watch. Ante, time for us to say goodbye. It's been a pleasure, mate.
As always.
For those watching at home, missed any of it, head over to our podcast platforms, catch up on it all. We're back in around a month's time. We emerge when there's the breaks. We emerge, when there's that gap when you need some Serie A fix. We're here to give it to you all. So for myself, Nick D'Urbano Ante Jukic, we say goodbye for now. Enjoy the game tomorrow morning. Enjoy the Serie A for the next month. It's the best league in the world. Check it out. It's going to be great.
Ciao. Fuck, that was fun.